Today I'm going to make a batch of Irish soda bread. This recipe is from Sally's Baking Addiction. I love all of her recipes and I know this one's going to be fabulous as well. We're going to start first with some unsalted butter. I need 5 tablespoons, and the best way that I like to work with butter for pastry of any kind is to use my coarse grater. So I just pulled this out of the refrigerator. I'm actually going to hold the outside briefly, just until it goes down a little bit. You see how it's getting a nice shred? That means it's going to blend perfectly into our flour. I don't want to touch it because it'll just get soft and melted. We want it to be firm. There we go. So you would do this anytime a recipe calls for a pastry blender. You can go ahead and just grate your butter like this. All right, now we've got some dry ingredients and we're gonna add the butter to that. So in here, I have some all-purpose flour, sugar, baking soda, and salt. And whenever I can, when I'm baking, I actually weigh the flour instead of measuring it with measuring cups. That gives you the most accurate measure. So just give this a little whisk. We're gonna add the butter in until it's coated. Just like that. Okay, so give it a stir so you don't have any clumps. And that looks pretty good. Before I started today, I went ahead and prepared the raisins. So I'm using golden raisins because that's what I had. I just measured them and poured tea kettle water over the top and let it sit for about, excuse me, for about 5 minutes until they kind of plumped up. I drained it and those were going to be set to the side to use. You don't have to use raisins in soda bread, but it's pretty much the classic way. Okay, so this dry mixture is ready. We're gonna add egg and buttermilk. So just mix up your eggs first. It'll make it easier. These are our stainless mixing bowls. I love these. And then I've got a 1 3/4 cup of buttermilk. You have to use buttermilk for this recipe. If you want to make it yourself, you can make with sour milk with about a teaspoon of lemon juice or vinegar per cup of milk and let it sit for a little bit, and that's a good substitute. But really, buttermilk does the trick. So when I buy buttermilk, I buy a quart like this. I'll use some for the recipe, and then I'll freeze the rest in 1 cup increments. So the next time I need buttermilk, I just go to the freezer and grab it. That way I won't have waste. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get this all stirred together. Actually, I'm gonna add the raisins first. That'll make it easier. Add your raisins, give those a little coat. By coating them in the flour, they're not likely to sink in the batter. All right, now let's mix this all up. Now, the next most important thing whenever you're making quick breads, especially something like this is considered a quick bread because it doesn't include any yeast, is you need to be careful about over mixing. So you're basically going to just fold the dry ingredients and your wet ingredients together until they're moistened. And we're not gonna work it too hard because we don't want to have a tough result. So this is a really stiff dough. So once you've got it mostly combined, we are going to knead it briefly. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I've got my baking mat here. This is silicone. It's great for doing cookies and pastries. I'm going to flour it slightly. These are stainless steel scoops. They come in 2 sizes. You'll love that. So we're just gonna spread it onto here. You wanna flour your hands. This is a sticky dough. And it's okay for it to be a little bit sticky, okay? So when you flour your hands, you'll be able to scrape off without it being quite as messy. And I'll add a little more flour over the top. And now you're just gonna work from the edges until you can kind of move it. I'm gonna bake today in a cast iron skillet. You can use a baking sheet if you want. I've even made these in the brownie pan. Okay, so see how it's not as sticky anymore? Now we can knead it. So to knead, you just take the heel of your hand and kind of move that dough forward. It'll help develop the gluten slightly until we can form it into a nice ball. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right. Now, typically when you're making a bread like this, you're going to score the top. So you need a sharp knife. Just take it. I like to do this before I put it in the pan because I have better control. So you're just gonna make a little X like this, and it helps it rise a bit. So I've got my 10-inch cast iron skillet. You can use a 12-inch if you prefer. And then just carefully bring your hands underneath, and we'll lift it into the center here. So you can see it fits pretty nicely. I did oil this slightly. If you're going to use an enamel Dutch oven, you want to have parchment on the bottom. But let's go ahead. We're going to pop this in the oven at 400 degrees. I'm going to bake it on the lower rack. It'll take about 45 to 55 minutes. We'll keep an eye on it, and I'll show you when it's done. The recipe suggests for precision to bake it until it's at 195 degrees, and I'm really glad because I would have personally taken this out sooner. So it is looking gorgeous. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out and let it sit for 10 minutes.